Hello, in this part we want to organize your structure in our Active Directory a bit. Therefore, we go back to our corp server and log in with a domain administrator. I will change this to full screen mode now. Then I go to the Active Directory users and computers, and here we have an organization unit called corp. We will create a new organization unit for computer, for example. Say OK, and one for users. New organization unit, users. So now we move our user to the users here. Yes, we want to do it. And then we go to computers here. Computers means these are all domain joined computers. They haven't been organized in any other organization unit yet. So we right click them and say move, and move them to corp computer and say OK. So now they are here in this organization unit. The reason why we do this is we have a bit more logical structure here for our users and our computers. Another reason why we do this is because we can't apply group policy to computers here. Group policy enables us to control several Windows settings and Microsoft program settings to centralized manage, for example, the desktop wallpaper for every computer in my network should be the same, or the user rights for every PC should be the same, or the favorites in the Internet Explorer or the start page should be the same. So to demonstrate this, I go to Tools and start the group policy management here. Then here I see my forest corp.zz and the domains corp.zz here. The first policy here you will see is the default domain policy. The default domain policy affects everything that is connected to your domain and every PC that is domain joined. Workgroup PCs or unmanaged PCs like laptops, for example, private laptops in this case, are not affected by the settings because your PC has to be joined to the domain corp.zz to be managed by your domain group policies here. So if I change something here, it affects every server and every client in this whole tree here. I can set this group policy, for example, for specific users or specific computers. As you see, I can specify it for any or several organization units here. So this is the reason why we structure this here. And as you see here further, I can't apply group policies to computers here. If I do something on the default domain policy here, then it will affect computers. But additional policies cannot be added to computers here. So, for example, if I right click here and say edit, I see the group policy management editor, And then here I have computer and user configuration. The computer configuration affects the local computer. The user configuration affects the user. So if you go to policies here, for example, you can distribute and install software remotely. You can change several Windows settings. You can make startup scripts like startup and shutdown scripts that are executed when the machine boots up or shuts down. You can change several security policies, and here, for example, I can say that passwords must be complexity requirements disable and say apply, and now I can use any password in the whole domain that I want to use. Before that, it has to fit several requirements. I can also say that passwords can change immediately, and 0, for example, if they should not expire. I will set here do not keep passwords history, for example, and I will deactivate this minimum password length. Then you have account lockout duration, account lockout threshold, for example, several Kerberos policies, local policies. If you want to record every logon event, for example, here you can set several user rights for your whole domain. Here you can change, for example, that you do not require Control Alt and Delete, and you can change the settings of the user account control here. You can set event log settings. You can define the startup settings of several services here, registry settings, something about the file system, for example Windows Firewall, and several things more. So what I will do here, for example, is to deactivate the Windows Firewall for my whole domain, because for testing purposes I won't want any active firewalls here. Beyond that, here I have several administrative templates, for example like control panel, network settings, printer settings, server settings. Then here I can configure, for example, driver installations and other things. Windows components, here I can, for example, configure BitLocker, Internet Explorer. Let us see what we can change here, for example. I can enable or disable OneDrive. I configure the Windows Defender anti-malware. And I can change, for example, our Windows Update behavior. Here are the policies. Here is the state, and as you see, it's not configured here. So I can double click it, for example, and say not configured, enabled or disabled. I will enable this, not this policy, I will enable this policy here and configure the automatic updates and say notify for download and notify for install. You can select here. I can select on which install day it should be installed, and if I click next it will be stored, for example here. Then here another preferences like network shares that I can auto mount, folders that I can create, shortcuts that I can define, several other configuration options here. User configuration, for example, here are log on and log off scripts that can be run when necessary, several other security settings, and other administrative templates here. Control panel, you can hide, for example, some things like that. You can change the desktop behavior. You can remove or add things to start menu. You can change several system settings here, and also Windows components here. Here are also some other settings for applications and the control panel settings. The group policy editor has no save button, so you see if you change something here it changes automatically, or it gets automatically saved. So if we go on this server to our Windows Update, we won't see anything that changes here, because group policy will be saved in the second where you change it on the server, but they won't be applied immediately. That may take an hour or two that the whole infrastructure of your network gets this setting. If you want to enable this setting immediately, you have to go to an administrative command prompt and say gp update force. Okay, I think we have to use the slash and say force, and we should write it correctly, gp update force. Now the policies will be enabled immediately. And if we go here, we see that some settings are managed by a system administrator here. And for example, if we go back to our clients here and reboot them, we should also be able to see it. If you reboot this thing, in most cases it will apply the group policy settings immediately. So we go to Windows Update, change settings, and you see that it has changed here. If we go to our Windows 7 client here, then you will see it has changed here now. Now we have changed all of our default domain policy. I go to exit here, and if I click details here, I see when it has last modified, and if I go to settings here, I get a report what here is changed according to the default Windows settings here. So you see here exactly what is changed in this specific policy here. We can also say enforce this policy. We can delete it. I won't delete this now. And here in links I see which area this group policy does affect. So this affects the whole domain tree like corp.cz. And yes, the policy is enabled. More things we will see in the next videos.